Good evening. My name is Hillary Denk, and I'm District Director for Congressman Foster. Thank you for attending tonight, here and on Facebook Live. After opening remarks from our panel and panel questions, we will start the Q&A portion of the event. We ask that folks come up to either of the microphones that'll be at the ends of these aisles to ask your question. We'll have a staff member there to assist you. We ask that we stay on topic tonight, which is AI. If you have questions about other topics or you'd like to meet with a congressman about another issue, we would welcome you to contact our office. There's many ways to do this. You can call our district office. You can submit a question or provide an opinion through our website. You can sign up for a virtual office hour. There'll be a QR code up on a slide later. There's QR codes out in the lobby as well, where you can sign up directly for a virtual office hour, which is a 15-minute virtual meeting directly with the congressman. And it's amazing how much you can get done in 15 minutes when you're focused. Or you can email me at hillary.denk, D-E-N-K, @mail.house.gov. We ask that your questions are limited to the AI topic tonight and that you keep your questions as short as possible, a couple sentences, so we can get to as many questions as we can. Again, if we don't get to all your questions, we're happy to set up a meeting in our office or virtually. And now I'd like to introduce our incredible hosts from North Central College and the president of this university, President GP. Thank you.
Greetings and welcome to the Waynes Concert Hall on the campus of North Central College. My name is Abiodun Goke Pariola, president of North Central College, but most people on campus call me GP, and you are welcome to do the same. Thank you for joining us this evening to discuss this timely and important topic of artificial intelligence, specifically the impact of AI on education and the workforce. I'm happy to see several of our students, faculty, and staff in the audience this evening, and I'm delighted to welcome so many community members to our beautiful campus here in Naperville. We are glad that you are here to learn from this impressive panel of experts. North Central College has a long and proud history as a place where community members can come together to engage in thoughtful and civil discourse and learn from local and national experts about topics that impact us all. It is our pleasure to continue that tradition this evening. The college is hosting this event in partnership with Congressman Bill Foster. Thank you, Congressman Foster, for your continued leadership at both the local and national levels. North Central College appreciates your service to our community, your commitment to higher education, and your willingness to engage in dialogue on important topics such as this. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our other esteemed panelists. Betsy Covell, Chief Architect of Technology at Nokia. Dr. Sean Jones, Deputy Laboratory Director for Science and Technology at Argonne National Laboratory. And Dr. Mark Hogarth, Assistant Professor of Physical Therapy here at North Central College. On behalf of North Central College, we appreciate your willingness to share your knowledge and perspectives with us tonight. Thank you also to Dr. Stephen Maynard Caliendo, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and Professor of Political Science at North Central College, who will moderate this evening's panel discussion. Now, here at North Central College, we, like many of you, are grappling with uncomfortable questions around the use of AI. We are an educational institution, and the first thing we do is not to jump into the fray. We think, we ask questions, we do some research, and then we try to figure out what's the best path for us. So we ask questions such as, what are the incentives behind AI development? Because the way AI is developed was not inevitable. There is a reason why it's been developed the way it's been developed. There is a reason why people are investing money in it. So you need to understand what are the goals, what are the intentions before you know how appropriately to respond. So what is the stated end goal of AI? And how might AI impact how we do our work, change the way we teach, the way students learn, and the way we work here and beyond college? For us, we're a very people-intensive business, one devoted to relationships and human potential. We cannot do what we do using machines alone. When people come to a college like North Central College, they're not coming here just to learn skills. They're learning to acquire skills and dispositions outside the classroom that's going to stand them in good stead for the rest of their lives as they deal with problems, with challenges that we didn't know of today. So those relationships are important, and we try to think of how we will use AI to be consistent with those values that have guided this institution for more than 160 years. Above all, of course, we recognize that we must ensure that our students can go out into the world competent and knowledgeable about AI, but hopefully with an extra dimension of ethical responsibility in its use and development. There are always consequences to knowledge. Because you can design something, because you can come up with a chemical doesn't mean you always have to do it, because everything we do has consequences. And we hope that our students will not just graduate with the skills and knowledge, but with a sense of ethical responsibility in terms of how to use AI. So also at North Central College, we have already begun to embed AI across our curriculum in ways that are aligned with our mission and that make sense to every individual program. So students who graduate from North Central College, regardless of their major, will learn how to use and deploy AI in those disciplines as is appropriate. And starting next fall, this is fall 2026, we are offering a new minor in artificial intelligence, applied artificial intelligence. And that minor is open to every student, regardless of major, whether you're an English major, you're a history major, or math, or chemistry. You can also decide to do those 22 hours to get deeper into AI and have a better understanding. In addition to that, we have training programs that we are setting up to help faculty continue to learn how to deploy, how to use AI. And we also, as a community, are we're coming up with policies on how AI will be deployed by all of us who work as staff on campus community. So we know, however, that there's still much we have to learn and much we have to do. This is a rapidly evolving and highly powerful technology, which is why I'm glad we have opportunities such as this to listen, to learn, and to share so that we can tackle this challenge together. Thanks again for being here tonight. Now, it's my pleasure to turn things over to my colleague, Dr. Stephen Maynard Caliendo. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, GP, and thank you all for being here. Let me underscore President Goke Pariola's welcome to all of you here with us in the room, but also who are joining us virtually. As GP mentioned, I'm Stephen Maynard Caliendo. I'm Professor of Political Science here, but I'm also, for the last 10 years, serving as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And I'm honored to be serving as your moderator tonight. The panel we've assembled is exceptional, and the topic couldn't be timelier. We gather this evening as technological advances are happening faster than ever and in ways that promise to change our lives, whether we embrace them or not. Firmly at the intersection of technology and the workforce sit our institutions of higher education. For centuries, American industry has relied upon our colleges and universities to lead innovation and research exploration and to prepare young people for a lifetime of productivity and leadership. Yet when it comes to training future generations, workforce preparation is only part of the responsibility we have to the public. At North Central, our stated mission is to prepare students to be curious, engaged, ethical, and purposeful citizens and leaders in local, national, and global contexts. Those four adjectives are at the center of what we gather here to discuss tonight. Together we ask, how can artificial intelligence in its various forms and iterations, including those not yet imagined, enhance and feed our curiosity, bolster our engagement, conform to our collectively embraced ethics, and help us to live and lead in purposeful ways. 2 weeks ago, in the first month of our nation's year-long celebration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, several dozen tech pioneers, lawyers, academics, and former government leaders gathered in Williamsburg, Virginia, at the William & Mary Law School, the nation's first law school founded by Thomas Jefferson. We came together to consider the opportunities and concerns of AI as we imagine the next 250 years of this experiment in democracy. We reflected on the dilemmas facing our founders as they set out a vision for a new nation to function in a world that they could not remotely imagine. And we left that meeting resolved to do our parts to remind Americans about the importance of continuing the democratic experiment where people and our duly elected representatives, with the constraints of power that the framers provided, are responsible for crafting a collective vision of the future. It's in that same Jeffersonian spirit that we gather here. What future can we imagine together? So let's find out. We're going to be led in our exercise by this talented panel. I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves, provide a brief opening statement, and then I will begin the questioning before opening up to the audience for further discussion later. Congressman Foster, would you get us started, please?
Certainly. Okay. Well, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Congressman Bill Foster. I'm a scientist, a businessman, and for 23 years before getting into this crazy business in the U.S. Congress, I was a scientist at Fermi National Accelerator Labs, Fermi Lab, where we were smashing protons and antiprotons together to make particles that have not been around since the Big Bang. I first programmed neural networks, the core technology, back in the 1990s, as trying to analyze some of the data that we were looking at Fermilab, and recognized the potential and recognized also then that the computers weren't nearly strong enough and fast enough to do what had to be done to make them useful. But you know, the world has been changing. It was a little more than 10 years ago when I first went in front of the Democratic caucus. Every year we have a retreat where we go off in a supposedly private area where the Democrats get together and we have deep discussions about where we should be going, you know, as a party and as a nation. And so I went up to the microphone and said, hey, you know, this artificial intelligence is coming at us fast and we are not ready for it. We better get ready. So that was 10 years ago, and back then we were talking about self-driving trucks, that you could have long-haul trucking, and there were prototypes working. So that was, and you know, people have been just surprised. The predictions, I think that it's fair to say that the predictions of self-driving cars and trucks have gone slower than people thought. On the other hand, very few people would have thought that one of the first jobs to fall were the Hollywood screenwriters, who had a strike they had to settle when they wanted guarantees that AI would not take their job. So this is just a tremendously important subject. In the last session of Congress, I served on the AI task force, a bipartisan task force that was set up. And I was sort of disappointed. It was very productive because, frankly, both parties are terrified at the implications of this, and no one has an idea really of how it is all going to play out, you know, either economically or socially or politically, or you know, and anywhere in between. So, so that's it's one of the important things we have to do. Now, the other thing, there are a number of specific things that I think Congress can do right now that would help. You know, there's a wave of deepfake impersonations coming at us. You know, we now have, you know, AI programs that can fake your voice and even fake your image, and enough to fool your friends or your family into thinking. And so that is already being exploited by the bad actors on there. And so we have to. I think personally, it's impossible to really guarantee that these won't get better and better, and so that coming in an internet connection, you will not know that that is not your brother or your mother on there. from what's being said. And the best that the United States government and Congress can do is to provide people a way of proving that they are who they say they are, and that you are not a deep fake, which Illinois, I'm very proud of, has just rolled out these digital driver's licenses that are the basic tool there. And so I'll talk about that more. That's one specific thing, and I'm working with Republicans in getting those adopted nationwide, in large part to prevent fraud against the government. And so that's one thing that we can do. Another thing is I'm very worried. If Democrats have a good election, I'm going to be the chairman of the banking subcommittee in the U.S. Congress. I'm very worried that artificial intelligence is going to destabilize our financial systems. You all remember It's a Wonderful Life, when you had a run on a bank? And that took, a few days where people stood in line. Now everyone's going to be sitting on their cell phone and tell their financial advisor app, if you even hear a rumor that my bank is in trouble, get my money the heck out. And so you can have bank runs that happen, not at the speed of internet gossip, which is what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, but at the speed of AI. So the bank run could be over in 20 minutes, and we are not ready for that. It's one of a large number of threats that we're not facing. We're not ready for. And then the other one, of course, is just job displacement. And we'll be talking about that a lot. I just want to say there's sort of two examples that I'd like to highlight because they're dueling narratives on this. One of them is that if you look at, and they differ by what the demand is for the product you're making. So an example of that is farming. There's sort of a fixed amount of food that we need, and as farmers have gotten 10 times more productive with technology, then the number of farmers that we need has dropped by a factor of 10. And rural America has been living through that reality for the last 100 years. At the other end of that is airplane pilots who have also gotten 10 times more productive because of technology. But because of that, the price of airplane tickets has dropped in real terms and the demand has exploded. There are many times more airplane pilots now than there were 50 years ago. So we have to look at the demand for the product, and I think that's one of the insights I've gained by puzzling this out for more than the last 10 years. So I just want to thank North Central College and everyone involved in this for this. This is a really important and timely discussion and a great place to have it.
Thank you, Congressman. Dr. Jones.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Jones. I'm with Argonne National Laboratory. I'm the Deputy Lab Director for Science and Technology. First, I'd like to just say thank you, Congressman Foster and President GP, for having this town hall on such an important topic, such as AI, and including Argonne in the discussion. This is, of course, relevant, timely topic, and it's on top of my mind every day at the labs because we think of AI literally every minute of the day. There's not a 30-minute meeting that doesn't go by where someone is asking me about AI and how can we use it to really advance our science and advance the science that we do at Argonne National Lab much faster. Congressman Foster talked about Fermilab, his history with that laboratory. I'm hoping most people here know about the National Lab System, but if you don't, very quickly, Argonne National Laboratory and Fermi are 2 of 17 Department of Energy supported national laboratories. These are national labs that do very large science, science that either universities can't do or industry needs to partner with national labs to really achieve. National laboratories have one-of-a-kind instrumentation and expertise not found elsewhere in the country and many times in the world. They're very special, unique places. The whole 17 National Lab Complex has over 40,000 PhD-level scientists in engineering and science. And at Argonne, we have about 4,000 staff. About half of them are PhD engineers and scientists. And we actually host about 1,200 students every year on stipends, on fellowships, and internships, really working alongside brilliant scientists and having access to these unique, one-of-a-kind, world-class instruments and tools, learning about the science that the national labs do. And at Argonne, we're a multi-purpose laboratory, which means that we work in a wide variety of science areas, think chemistry and physics, math, a whole host of areas, and including HPC, or high-performance computing. Actually, the laboratory has a history in HPC and AI dating back to the 1950s. We have an Argonne Leadership Computing Facility that hosts several supercomputers and actually hosts Aurora, which is the world's third fastest supercomputer. It's an exascale computer. We're actually the first AI-optimized supercomputer. There's actually a benchmarking test that happens every year to rank these computers, and we rank first for AI-optimized. Aurora can do a billion computations a second. As a human, we have a pretty good calculator too. It can do a calculation per second, but Aurora can do a billion, so really fast supercomputer, and we use this really to do world-class modeling and simulation, and we actually do next-generation AI on Aurora, the supercomputer itself. And of course, as a laboratory, we use and leverage Aurora along with our scientific instrumentation and our expertise really to dive into large-scale problems like understanding soft materials or new materials. Soft materials can be a class of like drugs, so understanding how proteins fold, things like that. Advanced materials for scale-up for science. Industry can make a really good 2 to 10 grams of a material, but that material can't be scaled up, so they come to the national labs and we help them with the science of actually how do you scale up chemical processes. And then we do a lot in high energy particle physics, trying to understand the universe. So AI for us is now becoming so important to enable our science and to really help us advance the work that we're doing in all of these particular areas. It's becoming actually vital for us in the future. And actually, it's so timely that we're having this discussion, actually, because 2 weeks ago, the Department of Energy rolled out or unveiled a brand new national initiative called the Genesis Mission. And maybe I can go into a little more detail during the Q&A section about Genesis, but it really is thinking, Argonne is great, Fermi is great. They can do large grand-scale challenges, but what if the 17 labs as a complex came together and looked at grand challenges and put all of our special science instrumentation and our expertise together to really solve large-scale problems? And then what if we made that a national imperative where we partner with industry and with universities to really attack these grand challenges? And so Genesis is really exciting, and love to tell you a little bit more about that. When it comes to universities, we certainly partner with universities when it comes to our research. Very prolific program there. But we also want to remind you, we partner in workforce development. And so we have a lot that we do in STEM education and STEM AI. Remember, we have over 1,200 students that partner with us in the summertime and throughout the year. And so our hope is that we can really make that even more robust, where we work with students to make the next generation of AI enthusiasts, those who would be very interested in learning more about AI and how to use AI to advance science as we're doing at the laboratory. So just to conclude quickly, AI is becoming an enabler for science. We're seeing that. It's rapidly changing the face of how we think about work, how we think about science, how we're conducting science in teams. We are somewhat looking at it as the next technical revolution. When we think about the Industrial Revolution, then the computer revolution, and then the internet revolution, all of those had significant impact on science, the way that we do work, the way that we're connected, and the way that we're communicating. And so we think of AI as that next enabling technology. We're really interested to hear from you and to partner with you on how we leverage this tool to really help us advance science and really make more benefit for the U.S. taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Betsy Cavell.
Hi, I'm Betsy Cavell from Nokia, the Chief Architect of Technology Development. And I wanted to address more the university students here in the audience today. I'm going to tell a little story. So I got started in AI about 40 years ago, so maybe a few years before you, but also doing neural networks, which were really fascinating. The whole idea behind neural networks was, can we make a computer that works like the human brain, like the neurons in your brain? Fascinating studies, fascinating work. got out of college, came to work at Bell Labs. Most of you, I'm sure, know the facility just up a little bit north of here. And, well, they didn't have neural networks back then. But we did do expert systems. We did some automation. So, you know, I still got to do some AI, even in my early days in my career, but it wasn't near as exciting as the neural networks. So I eventually found my way into other things, and that's where this is directed at the students. Don't think your career is linear. Take your opportunities to learn new things and try new things. And I went off for about 25 years and created new technologies, created new ways to do them, traveled the world, made friends around the globe, have a ton of patents, books, you name it, to, you know, to put on the wall. But a lot of great experiences. And then I started to hear people talking about AI again. And of course, my ears perked up because I was, you know, always had a fascination for this, but using it in new and different ways, which was thrilling. And I got an opportunity to move back into the applied side of the house, which at Nokia, looking at how we can use new technologies and bring them to bear into our products. Now, a lot of people still think Nokia makes phones. I want to clear the air. We don't make phones. We do make the networking equipment that our cell phones use and rely on. And this is really a global network that has to be very secure, very reliable. I was talking with some colleagues today, and I think it's something like 3 seconds a year that it can be down. Imagine your laptop only going down 3 seconds a year. Mine goes down more than that every day. So, you know, think about that. So this very powerful network that covers the entire globe, and we're starting to look at how we can use AI to make it even more reliable, more secure, more robust. And I have to tell you, when I started delving back into that on the applied side, some things struck me. Some of the differences in the AI that I did 40 years ago versus now, it wasn't so much the changes in the AI technology, but the changes in the supporting technologies. You think about back then we had databases, you know. Now you've got data lakes. Think about how much data you can put in a lake versus a database. We have graphical images. You can feed a picture into a computer. You could not do that 40 years ago. I actually had to, for my neural network, hand create all my data, so there was no way it was filling a lake. I had to hand digitize that data because there was no way to automatically digitize it. So, you know, the scale of the supporting technologies has improved so much, and that is really what's enabling AI today to do the things that it can, and the things that you're going to be hearing us talk about throughout the course of this panel. So I hope that you think about that as you're planning your careers and you're thinking about what you want to do. Keep in mind to stay open to all kinds of opportunities that are going to come towards you over that time, and how a change in one part of you know, the world really can impact other parts of it, and you'll bring those to bear over your careers. I can't wait to see what you do with AI, you know, in your careers when you get out there.
An excellent advertisement for liberal education. Thank you. We all loved our little Nokia phones, our little Nokia T9 texting. We loved the Nokia phones. Last but not least, my dear colleague, Dr. Mark Hogarth.
Thank you. Good evening. So I am a professor here, assistant professor of physical therapy here at North Central College, where I teach in our physical therapy graduate program, one of the newer health science programs on campus. And as an educator, I'm both elated and terrified of AI. And that's one of the reasons why I'm actually here today. It's one of the reasons why I have just dove head into this technology, how it can be utilized, and where it can support our students in learning. My background, I actually come from medical imaging, so I worked in radiology and neuroimaging for many years, where actually they've been using deep learning and machine learning, early forms of AI, to segment and find different parts and different interesting things within images. So this isn't a new area for me, and I've done the computations in the background, and my entire PhD used a deep learning AI algorithm to segment out the spinal cord in MRI images. So I love this stuff, and I can see the power of it. And my students can see the power of it. And I know that because they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, I took this thing you made and I put it in AI and it made all these quiz questions. And my first question for them is, well, were those questions any good? Do you know if it's actually helping you learn? And that's why I've dove head in to this area. I'm currently doing research on student learning and how we can leverage AI in a way that doesn't replace their thinking but augments it. For example, I teach neuroscience, and one of the most challenging topics for students is learning all the different areas of the brain and learning how they work and what they do. And I love teaching it, I love being up in front, and I love talking to them about it. I love grading their homework somewhat. But at the end of the day, if they have questions at 9 o'clock at night, I don't want them to call me. I would prefer they go to an AI chatbot that I've created and they ask it the questions. And I've already gone through and I've made sure that it provides reasonable answers. And I've created a form where if it doesn't create a reasonable answer, my students can reach out to me and say, hey, I don't think that's what this does. And then I can tell them, actually, yes, it is, or okay, I'll go reevaluate the chatbot. So there's all of these different areas that we're looking at that I think can be really powerful for students. I have students doing research on this where one of the big things we have to do, I'm a physical therapist, and one of the things we have to do is pass a licensure exam, a board exam. It's a really tough hurdle to get over after you graduated school. I have a student who took information from our curriculum and built a mock licensure exam that changes the questions every time, and it asks them in the style that'll occur on the question. This is a student-led project. I'm very excited, and we have a bunch of those things going on. And that's my educator and research lens, but I also have the clinical lens. As a clinician, and I'm a physical therapist, AI, I think you've probably already seen some of the uses of it. So when you go to the doctor and they say, is it okay if I record this session and have AI transcribe it for us? That's AI working in real time in our doctor's offices already. Which is really interesting and it's really cool. Hopefully what it should do then is it should enable that clinician to have a direct conversation with you and not be staring at their laptop screen the entire time. Hopefully that's what's happening. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with how these things can work. So as an educator and as a clinician, I'm very excited for all these ways that it can augment our thinking, but I also am deeply concerned that without proper guidance from professors, from our leaders in society, from the people who we look up to, that we start to use it to replace our thinking. We treat it as a really powerful search engine because, let's be honest, it is a very powerful search engine. It can get us quality answers, but we need to struggle to learn, and that's the critical part. So my job as an educator then is to help AI help us struggle in a meaningful way.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to throw my first question to the panel, and Congressman, if we could start with you, and then I want to hear what the other scientists have to say. Who should be taking the lead on policy making regarding AI? Should it be the federal government or should it be the state and local governments?
Well, we have a long tradition of using the states as the laboratory of democracy. And that is, for example, in banks, you have banks that are regulated by the states and a whole separate set of banks that are regulated directly by the federal government. And they compete. If one state does something really destructive to the banking system in their state, you then can have the federally regulated banks come in and do the job that people depend on for that. And so that's one of many examples where we've taken advantage of our federal system of government. But there's a problem that occurs, not only in AI, but in tech generally, is that when, tech is really pretty much a national or even an international thing, because if you put up a website, anyone in the United States can access that website. And so trying to understand how you would even start a business on the internet when you have people coming in from 50 different states with 50 different privacy rules and everything else. That's tough. And in fact, what it is, it's an advantage to the big players. Because if you are a Google or an Amazon, you have the lawyers to go and make sure that you're doing legal things in every single state. But if you're just some startup, you're in trouble. You've got to hire all those lawyers before you can even turn your website live. And this is so unless we're careful, it's going to be very destructive to the sort of the creative destruction of our economy. And so that is the knife's edge that we're balancing on. And there's an intermediate thing. We actually have legislation on this. It's to say, okay, states could go ahead and regulate AI, but only if they do that as a part of a coalition of a dozen states representing a third of the population of the United States or a quarter of the population. And so that way, that if you're starting your company, you only have to think about the laws of 3 or 4 coalitions or the standard federal deal. And so there's an intermediate thing between having 50 different states, each with their own standards, and one-size-fits-all federal regulation. And so I think that reaching out for sort of a compromise medium like that, I think is the best way forward on this.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if other panelists have thoughts. I mean, immediately what I would say is that sounds like a good plan. Do we have time? And that's one of the things the laboratory model has worked well, but the speed at which AI has grown and the data privacy concerns are making us, I think, all feel a little bit rushed in that response. Any thoughts about policy, whether it should be at the federal level, state level? Is industry concerned about? Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I will say, sort of from the clinical side, I see, we talk about HIPAA violations and protecting patient information, and that obviously is a federal law. And we need to, I think, continue to bake in some of those controls when we start to see these AI products as they roll out into the clinic. And a lot of those are regulated by the FDA. So I think there is some room for federal regulation on some of these things, especially in the clinic.
For sure. Good. Thanks. Betsy, let me start with you on this one, and then we'll see what others have to say. How does diversity in technology development and diversity in test teams impact the success of AI-based applications?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you hear that? It was a good question.
He's
Mom,
done good.
did you hear
He's done
that?
good.
It was a good question.
So we've already seen examples of AIs, and I think Congressman Foster referred to a couple, but I'll throw out a couple others, where, the AI seem to exacerbate some societal concerns. We have facial recognition technology that can't distinguish people of color, thinks they're all the same, that reject women's resumes, even though the skills might be better or at least equal to those of a man who gets accepted. And so you think about that, AI is supposed to be impartial, but really it's only as good as the data and the training that's fed into it. And so if it's getting data based on what happens in society today, then it's going to carry forward those same biases, those same, lack of knowledge, lack of distinctions that it sees in the examples it's presented. In the case of the women's resumes, it turned out it was noticing that the people that got rejected belonged to maybe Society of Women Engineers or some other women's organization. And so it said, well, they look like they'd fit the bill from the skills perspective, but I don't like that group they're a member of. I'm going to just kick them right out. And so it did. And the people that programmed it probably didn't think about that. One of the things that AI really is good at, one of its strengths is pattern recognition. And it will find patterns whether we see them or not, and that's why it works so well in medicine. And so that's where the diversity comes in gathering the data and then training the system, analyzing the output of the system to see what it learned. Did it learn what you wanted it to learn, or did it learn something else because it found a pattern that we weren't prepared to see was there. So the broader base of people that we can have building AI systems, training them, testing them, preparing the data, the better that AI is going to function when it's out in public, because it will have the experiences and the knowledge of a wider base of people to base its outcome on. And that's true whatever application that you're using. And as we've heard, AI is popping up pretty much everywhere. So for all the young ladies out there, get into AI.
And lest we blame the machines too much, there's a deep and long social science literature of humans making these kind of errors as well. White-sounding names get more callbacks than ethnic-sounding names, and male-sounding names on resumes get more callbacks. And so we can see the potential for exacerbation of trends that, as you said, Betsy, that we're building into the learning. Anyone else have any thoughts about the diversity of training on applications? So move these through.
Well, yeah, I'll say a little bit. You know, I was two sessions of Congress ago. I chaired the AI Task Force on Financial Services, where we were dealing with all kinds of biases, like you've talked about. You know, one of the most pernicious ones is estimating the value of your house, appraising the value of a house. And so it is a statistical fact that there are some neighborhoods that have some ethnicities in where the housing values are lower. Okay, and a lot of this is due to really unjustified. This is the fingerprints of redlining that happened generations ago as deliberate government policy, but it is a statistical reality that if you're in city A or neighborhood A, on average, your house is worth less than another one. And so now the AI, the people who program these AIs don't have a single line of discriminatory code in there. But if you expose them to these data sets, it will say, "Oh, that is in this zip code. I will depress my estimate for the value compared to being in a different zip code, even if the houses are identical." That makes their model more accurate statistically. But it is really unfair, because why? If you have two identical houses, and then just because you're a member of a different ethnicity, and so we said, okay, great, let's just get the discriminatory human out of the thing. We're just going to fly through your house with a drone and take pictures, all right, and then let the AI do everything mechanistically, so it'll be perfectly fair. And guess what? The AI algorithms said they looked at I recognized from the wall hangings in that living room what the ethnicity of the thing, and then it developed those exact same biases, and they were simply a reflection of the discriminatory reality of the society we live in. And then we are faced with a really tough question: do we force the companies to make their model less accurate, all right, in return to having them fairer, in some sense fairer? And this is, well, when you figure that one out, let me know, because it is we've been discussing that in various contexts for generations in trying to root out unjustified discrimination in our society.
That's right. Thoughts?
Can I just
please, yeah.
Very quick comment.
Please.
And the Congressman's example actually made me think about an approach we take at the laboratory, because you are very correct. We need more people involved in actually learning about AI and how to develop new AI software and agents, not just use AI, but actually develop them. And one way to combat some of these things and some of these issues is to really lean in on multidisciplinary teams. And so really building teams of people who have different life experience and work experience and discipline experiences, so they can ask interesting questions about your data. So they can look and say, wow, that's accurate, but is that fair? Or is that telling a different story than what the outcome you want for the AI to actually do? And so as you are progressing in your career, or you're developing your own teams, or you're thinking about teams here at the university, really leaning in on having that diversity of thought, I think, helps us kind of navigate some of the negative impacts.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Professor, I'm going to go to you with this one, because I think it's something that we all think about. How's the patient experience? We all are patients in a medical setting from time to time. How's that patient experience and the expectations maybe we bring into the doctor's offices? How is that going to change in the coming months and years as AI becomes more prominent in healthcare delivery?
Absolutely. I think they're certainly changing quickly. I think one of the things that we're all starting to learn a bit more about is AI can be helpful with almost anything. Doesn't mean that it's the best, but it can be helpful. And one of the things that it's really helpful for is taking in all of these tests, all blood work, all the examination, all those things that doctors do, and helps you to get to a diagnosis faster. Well, that can be very good, and it can also not be as good depending on how well that AI is trained. But what it's getting us used to is getting our results faster. I think one of the things that we expect, when you have a question, you can go Google it. You can go put it into ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Claude. You can get that answer really quickly. I know everyone here probably has the experience at some point of you had some symptoms and you went and looked it up on WebMD, and hopefully it didn't tell you had cancer, but it might have. And it wasn't always the best, but they're getting better and better. So you can take your system, you can take those results you get, say, from your doctor, and you can feed it into ChatGPT and say, hey, what do I have? And it can get you that answer really quickly, regardless of whether or not there's any actual clinical reasoning behind it. And that's the challenge. I think one of the biggest things we're getting used to, that we're already starting to see, is these really quick results. I think the other thing that, if anyone hasn't been to the doctor recently, if you have, you've probably signed some sort of a waiver to say that AI can be used to, again, listen to your interview with the doctor and take notes on that automatically. They're getting used for a lot more things now, for big data, for looking at whole systems, for looking at all the people who might need a chest x-ray, for example, seeing how what might come out of those what results might come out of that imaging that was done, how quickly they can do it. And I think for the patient, it can be really interesting. It can also be really scary to know that your data might go into something that's not just your doctor, who you had a personal conversation with, and who you were working directly with. It might go off to some computer system where an AI is running in the background to help that doctor determine what's going on with you. I think these are really good questions that people should ask their doctor. Hopefully it's very clear how AI is being used, but I think one of the biggest things you're gonna see out there when you go to the doctor or when you go to PT, you might see your PT or doctor saying, hey, do you mind if I use AI, or this data that we get from you, we're gonna anonymize it and it might go into an AI database. Is that okay with you? I think that's something you're gonna be seeing very, very soon.
All right, but I think what they want to know is, when can we stop having invasive colonoscopies? I think that's what you really want to know, right? When are they going to be able to scan my retina and let me know if I'm going to...
There are already products that allow you to space out the colonoscopies. I'm a huge fan. I don't want to name a specific project, but
He's a huge fan of colonoscopies, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I hear from them.
Of skipping colonoscopies
that's
every
better.
other time, because
that makes a lot more sense.
You can do DNA analysis of interesting substances. Anyway.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. All right, Sean, let me direct this one your way, because we've talked a little bit about AI, the levels of tools and applications. You had mentioned in your opening remarks the Department of Energy's new launching of Genesis mission to dramatically increase productivity of U.S. science. Do you want to talk a little bit more about Genesis mission? I bet you do. I know you want to talk about it. Please do.
I'd be more than happy to.
I thought I knew the answer to that question. The answer is not, do you want to talk a little bit? Would you please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the brainchild of Undersecretary Dario Gil, which is the Genesis mission. And it really is looking at a new way of really thinking about the acceleration of science so that we can do more for the U.S. taxpayer. So the goal is to double R&D productivity within the next 10 years. That is a big, audacious, hairy goal, and he would like to leverage AI to do that. And there's basically three components to the Genesis mission. The first one is thinking about a platform or a scientific instrument, if you will. And the national laboratories all have some things in common. We have very deep technical expertise, again, more than 40,000 plus PhD scientists. We have tools that are unique in the world that make data that's not available anywhere else in the world. And we have AI models at most of our sites. We have at least 3 exascale supercomputers, and we have other types of supercomputers at the other DOE national laboratories. The combination of those is what Dario is calling the platform or the scientific instrument. The second component is pointing that instrument, if you will, to solving 26 science and technology national grand challenges. And so these are, again, real big, audacious, hairy goals that would, if solved, would really change society and really change the economic impact of the nation and really help with national security. And so really having the instrument working on these 26 problems is a way, again, to help double R&D productivity. The third component is foundational, and that's partnerships. He's envisioning a consortium where national laboratories will work side by side with industry and with universities to then use this instrument, if you will, to attack these 26 grand challenges to really help with R&D and GDP. What I love about the instrument concept is that, it's somewhat agnostic. When I think about my time at universities, we had cool facilities, we had instruments, we had brilliant faculty, we had brilliant students, and of course we could generate data as well. And so in this partnership, universities and industry will be thinking about what's their platform, what's their instrument that they can point to these big, audacious and hairy, audacious big ideas. So we're looking forward to hearing more about actual funding announcements in the next couple of weeks of how we in partnership can really advance some of these goals and see what next big challenges come next year. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask one last question before we open it up to the audience, and I would like each of you to give a response if possible. I'll start with you, Dr. Hogarth. It's a selfish one. This is a dean question. What do you want from us? What should colleges and universities be doing to help not only transition students into the workforce, but to start to think about how we maintain the kind of ethical concerns that we've discussed and make sure that we're producing the kind of society that we want? What do you need from us? And I'll start with my colleague who's already working on it.
So I think one of the first and foremost things we need to do as an institution of higher education is we need to incorporate AI literacy into every major, into every aspect of both the student and the faculty piece. I think understanding how to interact with AI in a way that is useful, promotes critical thinking, and most importantly, is ethical, is crucial to the foundation of our mission as an institution and of higher education in general. I think that it's not just only for the students. I think faculty need to do that as well. We need to have every faculty member, anytime they use AI, they need to model that behavior they want to see in their students. So we need to be trained to say, yes, I used AI to summarize these notes, or I used AI to create this diagram. So from both the faculty and the student side, we just need to embrace AI literacy.
Great, thank you. Betsy?
I have to agree. I'd like to see every student learn AI because it's a tool, basically. It's a tool that can be used in many, many ways. It can be used appropriately or inappropriately in many, many ways. So I'd like to see everyone understanding some basic concepts of how AI works, what it's about, what it's really good for to help you use it in appropriate ways, what it's really bad at so that you don't waste your time on those things, and be able to apply it in a multidisciplinary environment. I love that you brought that up earlier because, Nokia is a global company. Yeah, we do technology. We have a lot of scientists. We have PhDs. We have researchers. We've also got project managers. We've got salespeople. We've got customer service. And as a global company, we have to abide by the laws of every country in the world, not just the US. And so our products have to take those things into account. Being able to use AI appropriately to help make the right decisions, to help make our products better, faster, more efficient, more secure, provide more data privacy. That's a big one in medicine. It's also a big one in communications. How do you keep your communications secure from other people, your data secure? So I think everyone needs to have that basic understanding of AI, know that it's a tool, and know how to use it appropriately.
Thank you. Dr. Jones?
As we say, plus one. I have
one.
to agree with anything my colleagues have said. I guess I would add, I would love students to use AI, but I want you to break some eggs. So I really want you to lean in on it and go beyond just like ingesting a couple papers and getting like a summary. Use it in your labs. Use it for, actual experimentation, not just doing like word processing. AI can do so much more than that. So challenge yourselves. And if your faculty are not challenging you with AI, challenge them. Why can't we use AI to do these things? Why can't I do my ECE circuit design course?
You're
with
causing
more
all kinds
AI?
of trouble now. You're causing all, what?
Yeah, I'm causing
Oh,
trouble.
look at the time, everyone. Good night. Thank you.
It's good trouble. It's good trouble. It's good trouble. And the second thing beyond students, I think, I would love to see universities lean in on their academic freedom a little bit more on all of the negative things that we've been talking about today about AI. This is where universities can really step in and study and do research around all of these areas and provide good thought, actually, around solutions in this area. And the National Labs stand ready to partner on both fronts.
We'll hold you to it. Love that. Congressman?
Well, if I could have just one ask from all of the students here and all the students that will be graduating around our country, it's to have a deep and mature understanding of uncertainty. Because this is a thing, as a scientist, it drives me crazy all the time. And there's a danger with AI. People say, hey, Mr. AI, what's the answer? Okay, and if you're a scientist and, the answer is 13, and then the very next question from a scientist, 13 plus or minus what? Because if you're saying, your life expectancy is 12 years, okay, but we don't know that within a factor of 2, you say, okay, I'll just go and live my life. But if you say, okay, we understand you have a specific syndrome, you are going to die in 12 years plus or minus 1 year, then that's a very different thing that will change your behavior. And so the uncertainty matters a lot. And I think just having a basic understanding of statistics. As a scientist, I've been trying to convince. My wife is Korean, and you can't get out of high school in Korea without knowing calculus. And so I was saying, that was sort of my dream as a physicist, that have an electorate who's all taken calculus. But even more important than that is an electorate that understands basic statistics, that there's always an uncertainty. And when the AI gives you an answer, ask the AI, how uncertain is that, and what are the input assumptions that drive that uncertainty? Because if it is making assumptions that you don't agree with, you should not agree with its conclusions. And so poking into the uncertainty is a habit that we're going to have to develop when we have AI providing quick and easy answers to every question that comes up.
I love that. And I hear that as another, strong call for liberal education, broad education, understanding how to fail, how to wrestle with things, and how to break things and work on fixing them together. Okay, we're going to move to the audience Q&A portion. We have, go ahead. You want to?
In testing.
Test. Okay, we've got microphones on either end. I will try to go back and forth in terms of please state your name.
Sure.
Please stay on topic. Please don't give a speech. I know y'all. I know what's happening. I can tell the people that are heading to the... All right. We're going to start on this side. Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right. Hello, my name's Eric Hale. I'll try and stay on topic. I have two things, a comment first and then a question. First, I recognize the importance of addressing biases which are inherent in the system. It's pernicious. But you may be aware of the example of the Google image where somebody asked for pictures of the founding fathers and you got pictures of diverse women. And then somebody took the next step and asked for pictures of popes and a similar sort of thing. And then it got even worse when somebody asked for pictures of Nazis and they came back with diverse people, which is inappropriate. Obviously, we don't want those biases that are in there. You may have heard the story about Caitlyn Jenner, where it was asked if it's more inappropriate, which is worse, thermonuclear war or misgendering Caitlyn Jenner. And the answer came back, misgendering Caitlyn Jenner. And Caitlyn Jenner said, no, it's absolutely thermonuclear war is worse. So Representative Foster, if you're going to pass regulations, just be really careful about what we do and how it goes. The second thing is, the timing on this is very apropos. Do you all remember where you were 6 years ago to the day? I mean, almost to the day. and what was happening around the globe with COVID.
We were about to lock down. That's
Yeah,
right.
we didn't, no, the market hit all-time highs. The S&P 500 was, we had already shut down China. In other countries, Italy was shutting down. I don't think we're seeing I think we're seeing something like COVID right now. The timing on this is
Question
extremely,
question in here?
extremely apropos, and that is, are you aware of this new software that just came out 3 weeks ago? ChatGPT is great for telling you things. We just crossed a Rubicon with OpenClaw. Now it is doing things. And I'll leave you with just one quote from Mustafa Suleyman, who is the CEO of Microsoft AI, who said every white-collar job is going to be potentially gone in the next 12 to 18 months. Are you aware of OpenClaw and what's happening there, and what are we going to do about it if something like that happens from an economic standpoint?
All right.
Foster, Representative Foster.
Yeah, Representative Foster. That was
Okay.
quite the wind-up, Eric.
Yep.
Yes, quite
Okay,
the wind-up.
well, you know, I still do computer programming to basically to keep my brain from rotting. And it's, so I've been using these AI code assistants and the agents as well for several years now. And they've gone from sort of a crappy autocomplete to something where you can write the heading of your, so you start writing your subroutine, you get halfway done, and it says, oh, I see what you're doing, and it completes your loops and spells your variables right. And then about 2 years ago, you could write the descriptive header at the front of a subroutine, and it would go and write your subroutine that you just described. Now you can describe the entire project, and it will pick out what packages it's going to use. I was interested in this problem, this potential problem where, SpaceX is sending up all these starships, or at least talking about it. And I don't know if you've noticed, they have a tendency to explode. Okay? And so the question arises, what happens if one of them explodes in low Earth orbit, and the debris field from that is going to just scatter everywhere and could wipe out, not only Starlink, but the Golden Dome and everything in low Earth orbit. Okay? That's a calculation that can be done, and I was able to get Claude Code to actually do a simulation of that with very little input. And this is, there's, I guess if you Google something big is happening. There was a note, I guess it's on X, it's on one Medium or something like that, where it's a note from a programmer who's had a series of startups, and he realizes that what he has been working on with his computing startup is something that's about to be wiped out by code writing. And I have sort of personal guilt in some of this, because I spent a lot of the last 15 years trying to convince young kids to get involved in computer coding. Okay, and now you're seeing Microsoft with tens of thousands of layoffs. All right, and so I think we have to realize that we're all in this together. When I was in science, when I was in physics, one of the things I was most proud of is that I could always write code that would run 30 times faster than anyone else. I was became famous for it inside my experiments. They used to call me Damn Fast Foster, because and I was really proud of what I do to optimize the code execution speed. And then I realized, maybe 10 years ago, that a modern compiler can actually do a better job of it than I could. And that sort of it cuts to your core. The thing you're most proud of can be done better by a machine. And this is not new. This has happened to the farmer and the factory worker. I represent Belvedere, this crazy district here goes all the way from down to Lamont and up to Belvedere, where we have the Chrysler assembly plant. And I talked to a retiree who spent 15 years with welding on the assembly line, and the Chryslers would roll off the assembly line, and he'd do a perfect bead weld as the car. And then one day they installed a robotic welder that could do the thing he was most proud of better than he could. Okay, and this is something that it's a feeling. Like I say, we're all in this together, and we have to really come to a better understanding of what we really value in humanity. And you don't quit playing chess just because there's a chess program that can beat you. All right, and there are many things that we can do as humans, particularly in a human-to-human basis, that will have permanent worth if we set up our society with an understanding that there is more value to a human than the market value of their human labor, and that's what we have to.
Thank you, Eric. You're killing me. You're killing me, Eric. All right, let's take one from this side, please. No. got it? Okay. Just takes a second usually. Yeah. Up. There we go.
Do that.
Go ahead. There it is. There he is.
All right. Hi, my name is Whitney Glowacki, and I have questions that deal with the damages being done to Earth in the name of AI. Damage such as rare earth materials being dug out and ecosystems being destroyed. Natural resources by data centers that are being shoved on all of our communities that pollute our water, pollute our air, pollute our soil. So my question is, what is your plan to protect the communities from the mountains of toxic waste that AI also produces? What are you going to do to protect our communities from all of these natural resources being used before 250 years? I mean, when I picture 250 years, I picture WALL-E. No water, poison air, and poison soil. Humans have to leave. Well, AI does everything for them, and that is not what I want.
Okay, thank you. Whitney, thoughts about the environmental impacts and the dystopian vision that a lot of folks have about AI? I think that's a fair question. Anybody want to jump in first?
Look, Argonne Lab is doing a lot of things, to minimize the
Yes.
damage, to make the computing more efficient.
Yeah.
Go, Greg.
Thank you very much, Congressman Foster. So, yes, we understand this is a serious question that you're asking, and Congressman Foster is absolutely correct. The national labs in Argonne in particular are working on technologies to make this much more efficient. So we're working on new microelectronic chips, for example, that run much more efficiently, use either less rare earths or have substitute materials, things that are not as rare as rare earths, so much more economical, as well as not precious materials. We have a whole science program on that. We also are working on more efficient data centers themselves. So how to make data centers much more efficient, utilize some of the heat that they're generating right now until we get to the new microelectronics. And many of our data centers and supercomputing facilities actually can use recycle their own water. So for example, the Argonne Leadership Computing Facility utilizes the Chicago Sanitary Shipping Canal, actually takes in dirty water, cleans that water because dirty water actually kills the computers, and we actually clean it again before we put it back into the canal. And so we have a recycling loop, if you will, with that tributary. And then we just learned from a colleague today that some of the data centers are actually now installing carbon capture technology that allows them to reclaim water from a CO2 conversion process so they can use less of the water that's in the community systems. And so everyone's developing and deploying technology to really reduce the environmental damage that people are concerned about with these data centers and supercomputers. So we understand your concern, and a team of people working on that from the national labs, from industry, and from universities.
Congressman, did you have anything?
Yeah. Well, there are already some success stories. For example, the biggest use of rare earths are permanent magnets that you use for motors. Electric car motors, even hybrid car motors, and so on. And the best magnets that were actually invented in the United States use rare earths, but because of decades of federally funded research, there is a company that's in volume production up north of Minneapolis with magnets that perform equally to the best rare earth magnets that are made of nitrogen and iron. So ammonia and rust are their input materials. There's no toxic pollution coming off of that. And these magnets actually outperform, and they're building motors and drones and all sorts of stuff with them. So you don't have these abusive situations where there are mines in Africa with people dying of poisoning and so on. So there are 100 problems to solve at once. And that's one of the things where AI has a shot at working on all 100 of them in parallel.
We're going back to the north side here. Here you go.
Hi, I want to thank you. This has been very interesting. As a healthcare provider and educator, I understand your concerns for sure. But also, I am a neighbor to Argonne, and I know this might be redundant in what you just stated, but I'm on the board of my HOA. I live right next door to Argonne, and in our
previous meetings and discussion of my neighbors and surrounding communities of Argonne, literally living right next door, the concern is the data centers. It came out last November from the management company saying that this was going to start in January of 26, and the Genesis program that's on the Department of Energy's website. And the concern is the neighbors are like, do we sell our houses now? What's it going to do? What's the impact? 2 different data centers that are listed, one 100,000 GPUs, another 10,000, and the impact of all of that, the immediate impact. I understand what you stated before, but the immediate impact and the timeline and some communication with the surrounding communities, because everyone is concerned who lives next door.
Thank you so much for that question and elaboration on that. If people haven't seen the news, we've announced 2 new computers that are coming to the Argonne campus. One's called Equinox, that's the 10,000 GPU system, and the next one is Solstice, that's a 100,000 GPU system. Both will do AI, do open science, and they'll be open just like our Argonne Leadership Computing Facility, do big science with researchers from across the U.S. and the world to advance science. Both of these projects are scheduled to be within the fence of Argonne. They're not going to impact the neighborhood. They're going to be on the campus of Argonne. Equinox will go into the Argonne Leadership Computing Facility, so the building that's there now with the suite of computers, Equinox will go into that building. And Solstice is planned, but not to go in that building, but still on the campus and not have an impact outside within the neighborhood. So don't sell your home. We're going to do everything within the campus of Argonne. We understand that's a major concern, and we're doing significant planning to make sure it has minimal impact. That includes all of the utilities that our second questioner asked about. Everything will be done as we're doing now with the Argonne Leadership Computing Facility, and we'll even have power that we generate on site to be able to take care of any utility concerns from that perspective as well. So we try to be very good neighbors in DuPage, and we have a history. We're celebrating our 80th year anniversary here. We love our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. We have a community leadership roundtable. We host a monthly meeting to tell the leaders in the community what's actually going on. We've had 2 discussions about supercomputing as well as quantum computing, all of the plans in the next 20 years, if you will, of the science that's happening at Argonne. We consider the community partners, and that's why we had that meeting. We hope that they would take the message further and let the rest of the community know exactly what's going on. But that's why we're happy to be on a panel like this, so that we can to really tell the public what's happening at the facility.
Thanks. We're going to try to move a little more rapid fire. We got 17 minutes and a lot of people standing at the mics. Please.
Hello, my name is Parker Gon. I'll keep this really quick. I'm a student here. I really appreciate you guys being here. This is awesome. I think from a tangible point of view, having AI in the educational system is an overall plus, but how do we ensure that our students maintain their critical thinking skills and use AI in an authentic manner? Because it seems like the educational system would have to be redesigned from the foundation. And how important is voice dictation when using LLMs in the classroom for preserving those critical thinking skills?
Professor?
Yes, thank you for that question. And I think you hit the nail on the head. That's my primary concern. We really want to make sure that critical thinking is preserved. That's the reason why you want to go to higher ed, so that you can develop your mind into something that's better than you could have before. It is, I think, the first start of it is modeling. So it comes just as a parent models behavior for their kids, professors need to model behavior for their students. They need to show what it means to use it ethically, how you engage with it. So for example, one of the things I'm doing in one of my classes, I have a research methods course, and I have the students build their own study tool. And I demonstrate one for them, and I have them build it on their own to see it. And then we all get together, and then we all talk about, how did you validate that? How did you decide that this was giving you something you could use? How did you build it? What did you use to build it? And then we come together on that. So I think what your concern is very valid, and it's something I think all of us are concerned about. The way to do it, I think, is to lean in and to really embrace this sort of technological sea change that's happening right now.
Great. Thank you, Parker. Appreciate you. Yeah, please, yes, Betsy.
From
please.
an industry perspective, if you lose your critical thinking skills, that's it. Because AI can't do anything without humans with critical thinking skills doing the programming, doing the training, using that tool appropriately. So, I'm pleased to hear the programs you're putting in place here at North Central. I hope all of our universities are doing that, teaching the kids to use this capability in an appropriate way, but it's controlled by our human intelligence, making it do those things, verifying that it does what we want it to do, not just the data that we fed to it, because as we've seen, we might have given it bad data.
Right.
It's us to analyze it and do that. So keeping your critical thinking skills is essential.
There's also one simple thing you can do, which is, very often a lot of these chatbots, you can give them, here's the directions, here's who I am and what I'm interested in, and that it sort of persists across many conversations, and just say, I am someone who likes the Socratic method, and instead of just giving me an answer, give me, here's the range of opinions on the answer to that question, and what do you think, or ask you a follow-on question. And if you ask it something for which there is a definite answer, then it'll say, okay, that's the answer to that, but here is another hair to split down the logic train. And one of them, Perplexity, I think has an AI that's set up that way, but any of these AI chatbots, you can give them directions, so please, that's the sort of conversations I want, is to have my brain exercised by asking what's the next question after you give me the answer.
Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Okay, so this is specifically for Congressman Foster. While there are many benefits for using AI, there are also many downsides. I think it needs to be acknowledged, and has been here tonight, that this is reliant on hyperscale data centers for the raw compute for this. These have proven to be very controversial and unpopular in locations they have been built. The issues brought on by them reach across state lines, PJM and the looming energy deficit in Northern Illinois being a perfect example of this. A lot of capital, billions and billions of dollars, is tied up in the infrastructure to build this stuff out in an industry that could drastically change within 10 years. So what specifically are you doing at a federal level to help mitigate the harm environmentally and economically that comes along with the infrastructure that needs to be built out so that this can be used?
Well, it's a huge issue. We hear about that all the time. Probably number one on the list, which I think you may have missed, is it's jacking up the electric rates everywhere. Then the PJM interconnect, you're getting all of this. The problem is worst on the PJM interconnect in Northern Virginia, where they've dumped a whole pile of these data centers onto there. And the energy markets are very sensitive to a mismatch of supply and demand. If there is a 1% demand and supply mismatch, that generates a 10% change in the price. Okay, so imagine now we're looking at a 5 to 10% mismatch of supply and demand from these new data centers, and that's going to be a 50%, and you're seeing enormous price increases on there. So I think one of the things that we certainly should do is that the companies that are spending huge amounts of capital for the data centers should also be expected to provide the investments to all of the interconnects, all of the new generation capacity and so on that go with the additional loads that they're putting onto this, so that they don't simply jack up everyone else's rates. I think that's the first. There's another thing, is that we've had a lot of success in previous decades by lowering the demand from electricity because utilities have encouraged people to buy efficient things. We waste like 20% of the electricity in our country, in the sense if you put highest efficiency appliances, you insulate your homes properly and so on, then you don't have this huge electric load on a hot summer afternoon, which is usually what drives it. And so that continuing to invest in that is going to be something that will make the pain in terms of the electric rates a lot less severe. Again, the manufacturers of these, or the deployers of these big data centers, should be expected to do their part to make sure that happens. But this is a huge problem.
Thank you. Southside.
Hi there. This is directed at Betsy. Betsy,
My name is Steve Spitek. I spent 38 years in the financial services industry with a slant on technology. My last role, I ran product development for a bank. And time again, in the last 12 months or so, the question to us was, how do we reduce our staff by 20 to 30% by utilizing AI? That means 20 to 30% of the most senior people, and many of the senior people, are going to lose their job. They're going to lose their health care. They're 40 to 50 to 55 years old. They're now out of work. Where do they go? So my question to you is, how can, and by the way, I'm a fan of AI. I use it every day. But how can we leverage AI to actually create jobs, have the corporations not be rewarded by reducing staff? Typically, human capital is the most expensive piece of the puzzle for companies. How can we leverage that to get them to do more versus reduce and get rewarded from a stock price standpoint?
I wish I had all the answers to that. Probably don't, but it's certainly a question that we have to grapple with as a society, as each of our companies, as schools. And I think it comes back to recognizing the AI is a tool. It's only as good as it's programmed, right? And if you get rid of all the people, AI is not going to be able to continue to improve and to advance the way a skilled workforce would. It's human ingenuity driving the AI that gives it its value by that constant analysis of the output. Is it doing what you think it's supposed to? You take that away, at some point, AI, try to find the right word here, basically regurgitates what's out there on the internet. Maybe that's not the most polite word, but that's basically what it does. It's not really coming up with new things the way a human would, right?
Role, right? You're in charge of technology, new products, and you're working on technology. You hire a programmer or an engineer that's making $250,000 a year, takes them 8 weeks to deliver a product, a little small piece of the product, or AI can come and do it in a day. I mean, it's tough, right? Because you have to have that efficiency, and yet that person's going to be out of work. Where does he go? How does he pay for his health care? How does he pay for his life that he's created? And finally, on the flip side, my son graduated from North Central College in 2020 as a journalist, or he got a journalism degree. He has not been able to find a job in his field. He has it because of AI. I think that's a big piece of it. It's tough for him. I mean, he's grinding it out. He's doing okay, but he's never had health insurance, right? That stinks. And I see that from a young person standpoint coming out of school today, and also that 45 to 55-year-old person who's at their end of their career, getting closer to it. AI is really hurting them. I'm not sure what the answer is. I know, I'm sure you don't either. But
Well, but it's part of it comes back to, like in your son's case, if he had the advantages of learning about AI, in school, of how he can apply that in the journalism field. Certainly there's applications for it in every field, as we've talked about tonight. So there's probably a certain amount of retraining of people that needs to be done, that would have to be done to make people better able to use AI in different areas and different fields. But even continuing to have your job and do it with AI, as opposed to today doing the programming yourself. So there is some new education that has to go on, and probably at all levels to start with.
Thank you. Thank you. We can try to get a couple more in here. We're going back north side.
Hi, I'm also a student here at North Central, and I'm specifically an English major. I have been warned by, truthfully, multiple of my professors that I may lose my job, or I may not be able to find a job in my field when I get out there. What can be done against job displacement? Like, I want to write creatively and respectfully on my own. Like, what can be done to prevent job displacement for me? Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you for your question. And from my side, I do teach in a STEM field. It's not, unfortunately, as creative, but I think you've identified one of the areas where we call it keeping the human in the loop, where humans are probably some of the best things that we can have is creativity, right? As we were talking about before, AI can regurgitate the data that it's been fed. It can, write a poem in the style of, whatever author you might want. But when you need something new, it's going to be derivative. And that's where what you're doing is so important. And what you're doing, hopefully, is adding value to, the world through your creativity. I think that the fun part with AI becomes when you can treat it as a way to say, hey, let's brainstorm ideas. Hey, let's think about this, or what if I wanted to write this in a totally different way, and it can start to ask you those questions and make you think about what you're doing in a different way. Sort of like if you were just having a conversation with the professor.
The English majors are going to run it all, honestly, and it's exactly opposite of what you think. There was an ABC interview with one of the co-founders of Anthropic, who was an English major, and that's exactly what she said, is that the humanities folks are the ones we're going to need the most. That's what can't be replaced by AI. It's most of the tech stuff that's going to be replaced. So don't stay with it. English major, I love it. Stay with it. All right, good. Southside.
Hi, my name is Joanne Martin, and I am an educational technologist. I work in higher education with faculty development and in teaching, and I've been involved in these conversations in earnest since, November 22, when ChatGPT kind of came into our lives. And one of the topics that's come up in my conversations that I've heard alluded to tonight, but we haven't directly addressed, that I'm sure many are thinking, and I'd like to ask this of the whole panel, including yourself, Dr. Caliendo, is what do you say to those who are afraid, who are fearful of AI, where they think it's going to take their job, or they open up Claude Code Terminal and they stare at the deer with headlights, or they're in their doctor's office and they're afraid to tell them what's really going on because they think their insurance may use it to deny them care later on. So it's more than just taking our jobs, but we are all interacting with it in our everyday lives now. How would you address it? What would you say to those who look at it and go, not me, I want to opt out?
Excellent question. Thank you. Let's start with maybe some of the scientists. Not me. I don't have a thought, but let's start with somebody who's more scientific on this. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I actually have a different problem. It's more of the skepticism to adopt AI, actually. And so again, our scientists who are at the edge of starting to use AI recognize it for its power to do things like, ingest documents and give you a summary, but to do that intuitive thinking and give you an answer to a really hard problem, they haven't seen AI do that. And so my role is to inspire them with some of the work that others are doing to get them to kind of jump in the pool, if you will, to join others and how to maybe use AI for higher level kinds of things. Most of them recognize that they use AI all the time when it comes to Amazon or IG or any of these other interactive software programs. They're interacting with AI. It's doing searches, it's doing prompts for them already. But really, for us, has been getting over the skepticism that AI can actually be useful in science. So I have, that's my challenge, actually.
Anybody else want to answer that one quickly?
Yeah, I can add just a little bit. What I would say is learn about AI, learn how it works, and then at least you'll know what you're afraid of, right? Because, we've talked about the fact that it's a tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's only as good as what it's trained on. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to be afraid of it for any purpose. We delved a little bit into the medical applications where AI, based on the pattern recognition, can make diagnosis quickly, correctly, in ways that humans can't because it's finding patterns we weren't trained to look for. But at the same time, you talked about when you have your conversation with your doctor, all your data is going into AI. Well, now that AI can share it with other people, so that anonymization is important. And if you know it's anonymized, maybe then you're less afraid to share that way. The AI that we're using in the phone system, we're looking at agentic AI, these little agents that we talked about, but communicating with each other to give you better service, to make sure the network doesn't go down more than those 3 seconds a year. And by communicating with different parts of the network between themselves, they can do these things faster. And then you're like, okay, I don't have to be afraid of that. That's not taking my data. That's actually helping me. So learning about it is your best defense from fear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Could I say just a
Yeah,
little-
please,
Yeah, so I
Congressman,
was,
you're going to close us
recently-
out here because it's 8 o'clock, so you close us out.
Yeah, so I recently went on a tour basically with a bipartisan delegation where we were getting brief Democrats and Republican members of Congress, including some very conservative Republicans. And it was remarkable when faced with the reality of the coming job challenges that our economy is going to face, how quickly these conservative Republicans invented UBI, which is Universal Basic Income, which is the idea that there would be a certain basic allocation of resources you'd get for being a human being. And this is a old suggestion, and it's also a tough one because everyone has, I think, deep in their brain, a resentment of freeloaders. And there is a worry that if you get a big fat paycheck for doing nothing, that a big part of humanity is going to just sit on the couch and watch video games and take drugs and not make anything of their lives. And this is a real worry, and it can happen either to an individual or as a society as a whole may just get lazy. Okay, that is the sort of nature of the debate that's happening, either explicitly or implicitly in this. And you see it in the arguments we have in Congress over how extensive our safety net should be. All right, and a lot of that's driven by personal. But you also mentioned medicine. That part of it, for sure, our economy is going to have to become more redistributive. I think you all know that old science fiction story about one person who owns the robot factory, and no one can compete in any job with the robots that are built by the robots in his factory. And the problem is the free market delivers all wealth to that one person, and then the economy stops. Because everyone at the bottom has no money to spend, and the person at the top has all the money and has no need to spend it, to help anyone else. And so when that happens, there is no alternative but to reach deep into the pocket of whoever's at the top of the pyramid, redistribute at the base, and then let the money circulate in the human-to-human economy until it once again gets funneled all the way to the top, and then reach in. It's sort of, as a physicist, I think of this in terms of an electric circuit that has to have a complete circuit path, or else the electricity cannot flow. And so I think this is what we're going to have to come to, is a much more generous safety net for those who have been, clobbered and have played by the rules and see their jobs disrupted by AI. And I think that healthcare has a significant role to play in that, because healthcare is about 20% of our GDP. All right? And there is something fundamentally different. If you're given a paycheck to do nothing, it is a soul-crushing thing. You're saying, okay, what's your life worth? We'll buy you off with this paycheck and just stop complaining. But if you're given that same, 20% of GDP, not as a check to do nothing, but as a guarantee of health care, that there is something fundamentally different being offered, that, okay, we don't know what your job is, but if you get sick, we'll take care of you. That's equivalent to 20% of GDP. It's a lot of money, a lot of wealth redistribution, and that, I think, is a viable first step. And it's one, if you look at other countries, like name it, Canada, England, wherever, countries sort of like us that have a guaranteed health care, then it doesn't destroy their incentive. Many of the great breakthroughs of actually in AI came from Canada. And it didn't seem like they had their incentive destroyed by having a guarantee of health care. So I think that is one of the things that we're going to come to as a country, as a first step to redistribute some wealth and provide a better safety net.
I'm getting the hook. I need to please help me thank the panelists. It was a wonderful. Appreciate you all. Drive safely, and please come back to North Central to see a concert or a play. Good to see you. Thanks.